Hi, my name is Luke Gross. I'm a realtor with Records Results Real Estate here in Southwest Florida, and I work with a lot of buyers. And one of the most frequently asked questions is, can I buy a home with challenged credit? Well, the short answer is yes, you can, but there are certain things that come into play that are going to influence whether or not you can buy a home with financing if you have poor credit. One of those is the age of the credit, how long some of those negative or derogatory things on your credit report have been there. And then some other things are, what you've done along the way to repair or rebuild your credit. If your credit is really bad, and you've had a very recent bankruptcy or foreclosure, it's probably not going to be likely that you're going to be able to get financing through a conventional or FHA loan. But if you've been 3 years removed from a bankruptcy, your chances are much better. And if you've done other things along the way to rebuild your credit, you certainly have a legitimate chance at getting pre-approved or approved for financing with an FHA loan specifically. It's not as difficult as it used to be to get financing. There was a duration of time where your credit score had to be much higher than they need to be now. But lending institutions, banks have kind of loosened up their underwriting guidelines, and now people can actually go to the bank and get financing where they couldn't before. I've seen credit scores as low as a 550 get approved for FHA financing. And obviously the higher your credit score and, the more steady you've been with, being on time with payments, and you've reestablished your credit, your chances of getting financing is much greater. But even if you can't get financed through a conventional or FHA lending program, you still have an opportunity to be able to buy property. I mentioned this in some videos in the past. You can go to, a private investor. You can do seller financing. That's always an option. You're going to pay more money for that. And you're going to pay a higher interest rate. You're going to have to come up with more down payment. And some of the terms are a little more challenging. Typically with seller financing, they have something called a balloon payment, which means that, let's say it's a 5-year balloon. That means you're going to have to figure out a way from the day you start that loan agreement with that private investor until that 5th year or that 60th month, you have to figure out a way to refinance and buy that investor out. Basically, they'll be calling the loan at the end of 60 months if you can't renegotiate other terms after that. Typically, 5 years is an adequate amount of time for someone to rebuild their credit, and it shouldn't really take that long, especially if you're diligent about knowing where you stand with your credit score and what's on that report, and taking the steps to remove the derogatory items and basically start to work on repairing your credit. 5 years is certainly long enough. In many cases, 2 years is long enough. If you're 3 years removed from a bankruptcy, for example, you're going to be in a good position to qualify, assuming other things on your credit report have been positive. If you wanted another option, you certainly could go with the lease option. It's a great way to get into property without having to go through an underwriting. You're really not buying any property. What you're doing is you're entering into a lease agreement with a seller with the option to buy their property at a later date. So you come up with some amount of down payment that's negotiable. That down payment is applied to the agreed upon purchase price of the house. And you're making a monthly payment on your lease option, where a portion of that monthly payment is going towards the future purchase of the home. So, for example, if you were buying a house for me for $100,000 and I asked for $5,000 down, you have a $95,000 balance on the home, and you have a $1,200 a month payment, where $200 of that, for example, would be allocated for the future purchase of the home. So now you've got an additional $2,400 a year on top of the $5,000 that you've given me in the down payment. And if you exercise your option to purchase, well, we take those numbers off the $100,000, and that's what you actually will be buying the property for. And it's a great way for you to enter this agreement, because as property values appreciate, you get to take advantage of all the appreciation, and you put yourself in the driver's seat to being able to purchase that property, because you're in contract with me and I can't sell it to another buyer until your agreement with me has either been exercised or expired. So it's a great way to get into real estate with poor credit or challenged credit that offers you more benefits than just renting. And you don't need to underwrite it. You don't need to go through a bank. You don't need to go through the challenges of getting credit approval, because it's basically a private deal. So that's another way. And there's a myriad of ways to get into real estate without having to rent, even if you have poor credit. So really, it's just a matter of understanding what your options are. So, thanks for watching the video. I'll have some more information out there for you, things that I've given other buyers in the past, tips, ways to get into property. And, I appreciate you watching, and thank you for your time.